lots of academics, for example, like me, we don't think about these kinds of things. We just do the research, and then we kind of often blindly, without thinking too much about it, we send the work to a journal. We don't even often think too much about which journal we're using for our submissions. We often make decisions based on money or based on reputation potentially, or where we've seen our supervisors, where we've seen our other academics that we work with publish their work. So it's important to boost your citations, as Faizan has outlined for us just now. It's very important to think a little bit more like a marketeer, like somebody who thinks about these kinds of things, in order to make sure that when you publish your great research, it does have that maximum chance of being picked up and being cited. Citations are a metric, of course, equivalent to the number of people that are reading your article. They're a measure of your academic impact, and they're really the way that academics around the world still get assessed, like it or not. I've shown you a few slides just now about Bentham Science Publishers. We'll come back and we'll look at those again in a little bit, but we're just going to go the way that we're going to do this now for the next half an hour or so in our presentation is I'm going to ask Faizan and starting with Noman, like a couple of questions, and hopefully they're going to give us some answers to those questions. And then we're just going to go through a series of slides in the second half of this session, some tips and tricks that we have for you to help you maximize your impact. So Noman, how are you doing?
Yes.
And do you have any tips for us so that researchers can get that maximum reach with their articles?
Right. I think the starting point always is going to be selecting the journal. For instance, yes, the relevance of your research counts a lot. You select your journal according to the relevance of the research that you've done, and you also check where the journal is indexed. That does half the job already for you. For example, if it's if the journal that you've selected is already indexed in Scopus, it is already in PubMed, it is already with Web of Science, you are already reaching a very vast audience, right? And what you have to do is to select the options and assess what's best for you, how to increase over the citations that you would have got from those indexing agencies, the opportunities that you would have got from those indexing agencies already, right? And yes, news media helps a lot. There's a very specified scientific news media out there. For example, Eureka Alert, that is of AAAS, with which Bentham Science also partners and promotes many researchers there, and everything that we can promote there, right? And there are many other platforms, including that. That was one example. Otherwise, Faizan has very well covered all the aspects there. And then there are not only are there social media networks that are general, for example, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. There are very specified networks as well. For example, you have Mendeley there, and you've got many other platforms, academia. You've got ResearchGate is very, very popular. And you would be able to find yourself many people who would be interested in your research, and otherwise you would also be able to connect with people for your future works, right? And one more important point that I would like to cover is to make your research open access. Open access is one of the ideas where which enhances the chances of getting citations. If you keep your paper closed, if you keep your paper abstract available only, there would be a selected audience only that would really just have the capacity to purchase the paper from the publisher and then use it, right? But if you already have made it open access and already are using that option, you would be opening for yourself a very vast audience that would just have to reach out and collect your paper and use it in their research and get yourself cited. So opting for open access is a very, very viable idea, really.
Fantastic.
Yeah, just want to add some more points here, and because it is important for a researcher to think about the keywords, because the keywords and the descriptions are the, you can say, the cardinal thing in a research when you are trying to make it public, and you are trying to make it visible for the research community. So one special tip here for the researchers, that they should use the Google keyword planner, and it is very easy, not difficult. They should go to just write Google keyword planner on Google, and when you will see a platform where you can search the density and the hits on that keyword. Like if you are writing something on gene therapy, you can just, or gene sequence, and use like you are selecting that keyword. So the basis should be what is the volume of that keyword. So how many people search that? And if you select those keywords which are high in volume, then you will get a maximum chances of the visibility, because those keywords are indexed and will appear, your paper will appear whenever somebody writes on Google. So that is very important. Then one more thing which I think is very important nowadays is the graphical abstracts. And you can see now all modern and big publishers, they have made compulsory that you should prepare graphical abstracts of your research while you're submitting your article. And that is very important, because these graphical abstracts are indexed, they are searchable, and it makes a very yeah, you can say impact. It makes an impact, like you can see and understand what your research is saying. Another important thing is that do not submit your graphical abstract in a you can say in a pure image formats. It has to be in the vector format, because vector formats are indexed, and they are searchable, more searchable than other formats. So that's why if you submit any abstract, graphical abstract in other publishers or some big publishers, they will ask you to submit in the vector formats. Then one more important thing, if you have this funding available or support by your institution, the animated abstracts are will be a plus plus for your research, because at Bentham Science we also offer this service, but it is a paid service, because you what you do, you provide your articles, abstract and manuscript to a company, and they get the abstract and essence of that research and make a, you can say, a cartoon movie of your article, and it makes it very appealing and easier for the research community to understand what your article is saying and how it will impact the society. So it is very important that whenever you are selecting or deciding to write an article, you choose your article title and take it very seriously, because you can find number of articles and research is available on Google Scholar or any network, that the title is the key if you are going to make your article impactful. It has to be a short, and it has to be appealing. Secondly, in many cases, what we have found, that if you're writing something like malaria situation or malaria impacts on in Saudi Arabia or in Dubai, I think it is not advisable. Do not use country or specific city keywords in your title, because it makes the international community, in most of the cases, it ignores such kind of titles. So it is important that you choose your title wisely and use those keywords which are in whose volumes are high and the hits are high, so that more people can see it, and you get what you want.
Fantastic. This is all the kind of stuff that researchers just don't think about. I mean, this is everything that I never bothered with when I was writing up and publishing papers. It's fantastic. But, you know, if you listen back to the recording of this session and you take on board some of the advice that our colleagues are providing, then that we guarantee that you will be able to get more citations, you will be able to get more hits on your work. I've got a second question, which we've probably already answered, but I don't know if Noman, you have some more comments you'd like to. Yes.
Can you please let me jump in order to remind all those who just joined us that this meeting is being animated by Dr. Gareth, who is the author education manager at EDENS and the research, which is a research solution providers. And we would like also to thank our guests, Mr. Faizan and Mr. Noman from Bentham Science Publishers, right?
Right.
So I would like also to remind all of our participants to interact and to submit their questions. And we will be trying to get to all of them on this meeting. I know you, Dr. Gas, you will never mind people to jump and ask questions.
No, of course.
I would be, and I would be, of course, getting back to them and answering them during the Q&A segment.
Yeah.
If not, for the sake of time, we will be making sure to send all responses by email. Okay, so the floor is back yours.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so we're learning a lot about how to get our articles much more effectively searchable and findable, and therefore make our research much more impactful. My second question to the colleagues was about how to ensure that other researchers read your next paper. I don't know, Noman, if you have further comments on this, or do you feel that we already covered what you wanted to say?
We have already covered a lot of it, but Gareth, yes, I would like to emphasize the point that research and researchers cannot stay isolated. They have to be very much among the community. They need to find the right platforms for themselves where they can readily interact and they can share what they're currently working on. Sorry, pardon me for that. I'm at home and you'll hear a few cars and bikes passing by. Okay. You have to make sure that the people around you, and you keep expanding your networks, your community around you, and you keep informing them what you're currently working on, where you require what sort of assistance, if anybody can join you, if there are any ventures that you have in mind, or if there is anything that you're looking forward to. So this would help you grow in your career, and also will help you learn a lot, and to obviously let other people know what are your endeavors and what are your future plans in terms of research and in terms of expanding your scope, right? So you have to join the networks, basically.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's very important not to be isolated. Like you may, and I used to do this too, you get very focused on your own community within your own university or within your own country, colleagues working on similar topics within your own country, and you forget that everything's so interconnected and that people outside of your region or outside of your country or even your university would be very interested in reading about your work. So how do you connect with researchers all over the world? Well, you network, you have profiles on social media, you have profiles on researcher-specific social media, as the colleagues have already mentioned, ResearchGate, academia, even LinkedIn and Facebook and so on. And I'm going to come to Faizan with this question. Why is it that it's so important for your research to be visible? Why can't I just publish papers for my own sake and just stick them on my office wall? I'm advancing research, right? If people want to find out about my research, they can come and they can find it. They should make the effort to find my work. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a good question. But I just want to connect one more thing here that you asked earlier, that how and why it is important that if you have published one paper and you want more paper to be like cited, and you want people to know about your second paper and how you can do it. Another technical aspect of this, that once you prepare your manuscript, your like second manuscript, and it is in the same field, then if it is relevant, then you can cite your first paper there. And one more thing here is that if you have heard about the Trend MD, it is a service which publishers often subscribe to. But what it does, that I'm getting some voices. I don't know, it's at my side or something. Uh, I'm getting echo, I guess.
I hear that too, but I think maybe
yes, I think some participants are not muted. So please mute yourself so we can hear each other.
Yeah. So thank you. Thanks a lot. So that is the reason. What happens that when you search any article on a publisher's website, you get recommendations, and that you can see similar articles in the field. And I think it is important that if your keywords and your metadata is optimized, your article will appear in those similar category fields. And when they will appear, the chances are higher that you are read, and your paper is visible to the right audience. Because if they're searching on cancer, on oncology, let's suppose, and your articles is on oncology, and the keywords is repeated rightly, or the density of the keyword is fine, then the high chances is that that article will appear below that oncology research, and you will get the benefit of it, and your article may be cited if the quality is good. Your question about that, why it is important. There are many reasons, as I said. Researcher or research department wants to increase the visibility of the research, and why they do it, they want to improve their academic impact by gaining more views and by gaining citations of the research articles. And the H index of the researcher is very important. Like if your articles are cited, and they are cited, you can say, every time you're cited good enough, then your H index will improve. And there are now number of metrics available, like HI10 index, HI5 index, R index. These are, and why they're important for the researchers, that they increase the stature of the researcher. If you have good H index, if you have good citations, you're always noticeable. Because if you see at the publisher side, what happens that what we do, we search researchers on the basis of their H index. So if their H index are high, then we ask them to contribute a free open access article. We provide them leverages. We provide them a number of benefits to publish in our journals. And if you go on the hello, sorry. If you go onto the conference organization side, you see that what the conference organizers do, they find people with good H index and invite them as a keynote speaker or session speakers, and give them financial aid, and provide them other perks and benefits of it. So for the researchers, it is very important that their article is cited, and they get more and more citations. Their standing in the research community will go up, and they are noticeable, and they are invited by the research community as a key decision maker and as a key speakers. So this is why research wants its paper to be cited and impactful. These are my thoughts on this.
Fantastic. We're gonna recap on a lot of this information as we go through into the second part of the presentation, and we'll bring the guys back to give their thoughts and comments on the tips that we have to help you increase your citations. Noman, can I invite you just to say a few things about Bentham Science Publishers for our colleagues listening to the presentation? Like, who are you? What do you do? What's the story?
Okay. Bentham Science, is relatively compared to the other many publishers in the West. It publishes in mostly in the area related to pharmaceutical sciences and medical sciences. And then there are other applied sciences that we are mostly dealing with. And Bentham is a very interesting place. Yes, indeed. We get to work on many aspects, ideas. For example, as we do with yourself as well, Gareth, the webinars that we do for the researchers. And there are many other ways that we help the researchers especially the ones who are new to it and who are emerging and they would like to enhance themselves. We help them out very much how to really write their papers, how to select the journals, how to get them published, and then there are some very established journals that we have. For example, current neuropharmacology, and then current medicinal chemistry, and excuse me, please.
Yeah, just adding to Noman's comments, we publish more than 200 journals, and most of them are subscription based, like the content is behind the paywall, and like 60 to 70 journals, they're open access. And the main area of publications are drug discovery, drug design, pharmaceutical sciences, patents, because this is our specialty. And we are also publishing books. We have more than 1,000 books in our portfolio. So we are a diversified publishers in terms of books and open access journals. But if you say the core our publication area is discovery, drug design, and chemistry and pharmaceutical sciences, where we have more than 40 journals, impact factor journals. And it shows the quality content we have. It shows we are a serious publisher in this field, and we are we're very strong in the area of pharmaceutical sciences. Like we have more than 30 journals which have good impact factor in pharmaceutical sciences and neurosciences. We have a lot of journals in the field of neuroscience with the impact factor reaching up to 7.63, which is very respectable.
I think that's one of the reasons that I also wanted to introduce Bentham Science Publishers to the IVPN community in this presentation, because of that large number of excellent journals that could be target journals for colleagues listening to this for your next paper. And these guys, these colleagues, these friends are going to help you. If you publish your work in a Bentham Science journal, for example, then you do actually have a very good chance of attaining a great deal of impact, because the marketing support that will be behind you on that is very significant and very expert. Just give me 5 or 10 minutes to go through a few slides, and then I think we'll be into like a further discussion about some of the issues that Faizan and Noman have raised for us this evening. Everybody's aware, of course, that publications are still at the heart of our metrics for impact as researchers. We count papers, we look at impact factors. Our institutions count citations, they look at circulation, they look at which journals we're publishing our work in. But as researchers, of course, it's very important to think about this very seriously. As the colleagues have talked about, most researchers don't think too hard or at all about where they're publishing or their keyword selection, or many of the techniques and the topics that Faizan and Noman have covered already for us this evening. I've tried to follow with some notes in the chat box, and of course we'll be happy to share further information about a lot of this at the end if you have questions. But everybody's aware of citation analysis. Of course, it's a way of measuring the impact of an author, an article, or a publication just by counting the number of times that that article, that publication, or that author has been cited by other works. You should be aware of the various tools that you can utilize, and we'll mention a number of these again at the end. But we talked about Web of Science, Scopus, and Noman mentioned those. It's important to make sure that your choices of journals, when targeting your work to academic journals, those journals are listed in good, reputable databases. Do you have a Google Scholar site? Do you have an Orchid ID? Very important. If you don't have these profiles, then nobody else around the world is really going to be able to find you or find out about your research. People often ask us, why do I need to care about citation analysis? Why is that important for me? Well, it's important to know who's citing your work. You might want to connect with them and build a collaboration in your research area in the future. You want to know who's looking at your papers. You want to know which are the most highly cited articles in your own research field. You can use those highly cited articles to improve your own research performance, even your own writing skills, by looking at how successful researchers put articles together. And also, you can target your research at the best journals in your field. Faizan mentioned the Bentham Science journals with high impact factors in pharmaceutical sciences. Those are potentially worth looking at because you want to publish in good journals. That's how you can get jobs. That's how you can justify your requests for funding in the future. We put some information into this presentation and have a look at the slides afterwards. If you want to know how journals calculate impact factors, that information is provided for you here. Simply put, a journal's impact factor for a particular year looks at the total number of articles, the citable articles in that journal over the last 2 years, divided by the total number of times its articles were cited over the last 2 years. So the higher the impact factor of a journal, the more papers that journal has published that have gotten citations. So that's why we care about this. That's why we're interested in looking at this kind of thing. We put some strategies for impact also into this presentation. Of course, we're all trying to engage more and more with the public and provide lay summaries, graphical abstracts, animated abstracts, as Noman and Faizan talked about, like ways in which you can communicate your research to the general public, to policymakers, to the government, to show that your research is making a difference to the lives of ordinary people, potentially not just within academia. So assess your impact. This is an image from the Kudos website, and the colleagues mentioned this as a great site to have a look at as a way of developing strategies and techniques to increase and rise up your impact. I've got just a short list of top tips for boosting citations, and colleagues, if you have comments on any of these, please absolutely feel free, Noman and Faizan, to jump in and make comments. I think you've covered expertly many of these tips already, but let's put them into a sequence, a kind of countdown of top tips for boosting your citations. Number one, choose your keywords carefully. As both colleagues already talked about, it's crucial that your research is findable, search engine optimized, SEO. Find good keywords. Use some of the databases that we've talked about, that you'll find that information down there in the chat, to get keywords that have high density and that will help other workers to find and cite your work. And I've always been told, and I'm not sure if this is actually correct, so maybe one of you guys can tell me if it is or not, but you want to use different words in your keywords that you input during the submission of your article to the words that you put in the title. Otherwise, you'll end up duplicating the search effort and wasting keywords. So different words to the keywords that you might want to put in the title. So that's our tip number one for boosting citations. Tip number two, use the same name on all of your papers. I've published papers over the course of my career: Gareth Dyke, G. Dyke, G. J. Dyke, Gareth J. Dyke. It's confusing for other people around the world, and it makes your work more difficult to find and cite and to get assessed based on your research output. What's the best way to make sure that you're getting credit for all of your research, past and current? Well, sign up for an Orchid ID. If you don't know what an Orchid ID is, have a look now at orchid.org. Great way to make sure that you are findable by other colleagues outside of your region. Lots of common family names in England. Lots of people are called Smith. So if you're publishing research and your last name is Smith, there might be another person with the same name who's also publishing research in the same field. So tip number 2, use the same name on your papers, disseminate and promote your research, not just once the work is published. Consider research to be a journey. Talk about your work, promote your work on social media networks, as we've discussed, and develop engagement. Cite within reason your own previously published papers. Faizan mentioned this a moment ago. If you've published a paper recently and you're writing another paper, why not cite the earlier paper in the paper that you're now writing? That boosts the citations of the first paper, but don't go overboard. Peer reviewers don't like it when they see lots of citations for an author's work in an article. So if you're just citing your own papers in a submission, that's not a good strategy to get it published. But it does show, if you're doing this correctly, that your previous work forms a pattern, that you are becoming a leader in the field. Journal selection is key. We've talked about that already. Colleagues at Bentham will probably want to say some more about that in a moment, but choosing a good journal, most researchers don't put the effort and energy into that step. They just think, oh, you know, at the last moment, or use a journal that their supervisor or one of their other colleagues has recently published in. So journal selection, absolutely key. This is how you maximize your readership. Try to publish in open access journals. That's also been emphasized in our session this evening, if you can. Why is that important? Well, open access journals, as the name suggests, are open to everybody. You don't have to have a subscription or to be based in a particular institution or country or region to get access to content. But the downside of open access publishing from an author's perspective is often the cost. And I'm sure we'll come back to that in our Q&A session in a moment. But most academic authors, if you ask them, they support open access. They worry about certain things like cost, like intellectual property. Write those review papers if you can. Lots of people get confused about what review papers are. Not the same thing as a literature review. And often, as Faizan and Noman will confirm in a moment, journal editors usually invite people to write review papers rather than authors writing review papers and just blindly submitting them to journals. But if you do want to boost your citations, very important to think about writing review papers. Can be a key career step. Structure them around a debated issue or a question. And of course, these get lots of citations. People like to cite review papers because it saves time, it saves space. So if you do get the chance, go for it. Submit your papers to those special issues also. Why is that important? Well, you get access to senior colleagues, you get access to collected volumes of research on similar themes from conferences, for example, and you can always propose to a publisher or to a journal, hey, wouldn't it be a great idea to publish a special issue on our conference that we have coming up in 6 months, or even on our conference that happened recently? We've got some research, we're thinking about collecting it together. Special issues, again, within thematic subject areas, very highly cited. So a good idea to try to get your work into a special issue if you can. And another great tip, collaborate. Collaborate, 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 work with other people. If you write a paper on your own, it's only going to get seen and cited by people within your own network. Okay, but if you collaborate with 20 other authors, then of course there's immediately a much larger network of colleagues who will get to see that article and potentially cite it. Collaborations are the key to a successful career. enhance your impact and internationalize your research, and go for higher impact factor journals where possible. So very important, a number of tips. Make sure your reference list is comprehensive. That's tip number 11. Be smart with your title, as Faizan talked about a little bit earlier. Make sure your title is enticing, attractive, alluring, and gets people interested in reading your work. Noman and Faizan, let's go to Noman first. Any comments on this as we come back to our slide about Bentham Science Publishers? Any comments as we close out our session this evening?
Yes, I think there's a question that you raised, and I think we need to let people know of it. Yes, open access publishing, as I told about the importance of it, there's certainly a high cost involved, right, for an individual. All right. So what every publisher is doing now, and what we are also emphasizing on, Bentham Science is now collaborating with institutions. All right. There are various arrangements that you can do with the institutions, and the researchers play a very important part there. They can recommend their institutions to partner with us, partner with Bentham Science, and create collaborative agreements, create collaborative partnerships where the researchers can benefit by bearing no cost for open access, all right? And they also get access to what has been published already in the journals, right? So there are many such arrangements. For example, Read and Publish is an important endeavor that Bentham Science is working on. And there are other collaborative partnerships that institutions can create. So the researchers, what they have to do to promote themselves, the idea of open access, is to make their institutions understand and make their institutions reach out to the publisher, reach out to Bentham Science, and ask for collaborations. There can be many arrangements that can be done, and the researchers can highly benefit from it, right?
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, great. So a read and publish agreement can be made by an institution, by a university, by a hospital, or even at the national level. There's been a few famous national level read and publish agreements that you may have read about in the media. And what this means is that basically your institution makes an agreement with a publisher, so you can then, as a member of that institution, get access to all of the content that Bentham Science Publisher, for example, is putting out, but you can also then have access to the publications. You can publish your work in those journals without having to pay. And I see that Emna's saying that she didn't know that this would be possible. So maybe Faizan, we should emphasize this a little bit more. But is there something else that you wanted to add to our series of tips and tricks for boosting and maximizing citation?
You have covered a lot. Excellent work, I should say. Just one more thing which I have seen from some publishers, from some researchers, what they do, they create a link of their article, their recent published article, and add it in their email signature, and that helps dissemination of the article in their peers. And then again, one more thing which is unique and which should be considered, that researcher should, while making the article, while making the manuscript, he should translate it into different formats, like one for blog post, one podcast, practitioner report, or what you call executive summary, and visual summaries. So when he will submit the article to the publisher, he will have all these formats, and he can use them if the institution or the organization has a blog, he can add that blog post there. Or if your institution or organization don't have any blog, you should start your own blog. And you can, while you have your own podcast at that level, you can upload it on YouTube. It's free, and it is very impactful. And then visual summaries, as I have already discussed, like animated abstract or graphical abstracts, you can post them on Figshare. Figshare is a platform where you can submit figures or tables or other like tabulated material there, and that is also citable. So you will get citations through all these formats. And mind it that your shares, your article shares, or your comments, or uh, uh, community likes, what you call, they are also recorded through a metric which is called alt metrics. So a researcher should also chase articles metric, like he or she should check what citation his or her article is getting, and this can easily be done through Google Scholar, because your article will be automatically indexed in Google Scholar, or through dimensions.ai. You'll just write your article DOI or your title. You will get the article citation and article metrics. And also at dimensions, you will also see the alt metric score of your article, how well your article is doing on the social media or the researchers network. So you will get to know how my article is performing, and you will act likewise.
Absolutely great. Like, we've gotten a huge amount of information this evening from Noman and from Faizan. It's been great. And Emna's also saying, like, ResearchGate and Orchid are great platforms, aren't they? Well, they absolutely are. Like, I personally think that everybody should be on at least an Orchid, with an Orchid ID. That's becoming more and more important, especially for submissions of articles to journals. Like, lots of publishers are requiring you to have an Orchid ID these days. So Emna, we've reached the end of our presentation, so thank you so much. And I wonder if you want to jump in and invite our participants to ask questions.
Yeah, actually, I would like first to thank you, Dr. Dyke, for this outstanding presentation as usual. And I would like also to thank our guests for the huge amount of information we have got from them. It's amazing to have you all as gurus of the research field. And of course, I would like to invite all of our participants to jump in and ask live questions, write their questions on the chat box so we can answer them. We would be very happy to answer your questions first.
I think we should also invite Noman and Faizan to maybe put their email addresses into the chat box, because these guys are marketing experts, and so in the future, if you have questions either about your own articles or where to publish your articles, that would be I mean, they're always happy. I know they are very happy to hear from you.
I will be the first one to do
that.
Thank you.
We had a hand up a moment ago, Emna.
I think so. I have asked Dr. Khan if he already has a question. Don't hesitate to jump in and ask it, please.
You do have a recording of this for everybody. I know that everybody will get a certificate.
I'm sorry, Gareth, I cannot write here. I don't know if I'm allowed to write.
Yes, you can write on the chat box. It's open to everyone.
Okay.
Yes, the chat box tells me that I cannot write also. Let me just try it again.
Okay. Everyone, okay, try now, please.
There you go. Now it's working. Perfect. And we provided like this PowerPoint as well, so everybody can get a copy of this PowerPoint. And I don't know, other colleagues may be listening on Facebook or other platforms. So hopefully we'll
I still can see Dr. Khan trying to ask a question.
Okay.
So don't hesitate, please.
You can just unmute yourself if you want to ask, if you want to jump in and ask us something.
Yes, I think we have some questions now.
Great.
So Dr. Khan is asking, how many citation is good for researchers?
Faizan?
It's, I would say more than 100,000, but
It's never enough.
it's never enough. So at the start of the career, I think average citation, which I see, if your article is getting 5 to 10 citation, it's good. It's a good start because on average, a good article gets around 10 to 15 citations. But at the start, if you're getting 5 or 10 citations, you should be happy because your article is making some impact in the research community.
Yes, sure thing. Dr. Abdullah Sadi is thanking you for this informative session. And yes, absolutely, it's amazing as every time. We are still waiting for your questions.
I think this kind of thing is really often quite important for researchers. And I know that like when I was working as a full-time academic researcher, like this kind of thing, as I've said several times this evening, I never really thought about it, you know, but there are, as you've seen from our guests this evening, like quite a number of quite easy to follow and easy to do things that you can, you know, do when you're writing a paper that will quite significantly enhance its reach and the number of citations that you're going to get. So it's well worth, you know, for example, putting the effort into keyword selection, getting a title that, you know, makes sense and is interesting to people like who are more than just your own research area or within your own region, and signing up for some of the platforms that we've talked about this evening as well. So yeah, I always learn a lot from these guys anyway.
Yeah. So there's another question from Dr. Khan. Is there any difference between citation index and impact factor?
Noman, do you want to answer that? The difference between citation index and impact factor?
Yes, indeed. Citations are what your paper gets, right? Impact factor is calculated through the citations and the papers that are published, right, in the previous 2 years. And that's for the journal, basically, right? And sorry, what was the third thing? Gareth, if you could please
Sorry,
yes,
difference.
Sure. Yeah, it's about any difference between citation index and impact factor.
Index, all right.
I'll just comment here.
Sure,
if you're talking about the citation index, it refers to the cite score, which is of Scopus. And if you're talking about the impact factor, that is of Web of Science. And the basic difference is of the indices or indexes and the calculation metrics, because impact factor calculates the citations of the 2 previous years, while citation index calculates the citation of the previous 3-year period. So this is the main difference, and one is called cite score, which is of Scopus product, and the impact factor is of Web of Science product, which calculates the previous, the last 2 years citation period.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faizan, right? So we have another question from Nada Ahmed. She says, how to approach another researcher in another university or country for collaboration? I'm still an early stage researcher.
Yeah, we get this question a lot, and yeah, the first thing to say is don't be shy about doing that, because often people are really happy to make contact with colleagues in other countries and in other regions. So I would say if you're an early stage researcher, it's actually a fantastic idea to reach out to international colleagues working in the same subject area and send them information about your research. Talk to them about what you're doing. If you've got an abstract, maybe for a conference or some other work that you could share, invite them to comment. It's almost always a very positive experience, and you never know what will happen if you do that. Like, you know, they may be very happy to find a collaborator in your country. They may be very happy to find access to a new research group that they can work with, and that might translate in the future into collaborations for you, or a postdoc, or even a job in the future. So I know it can be nerve-wracking to send that email to, you know, big professor in another country, but it's worth doing. And certainly if you get in touch with us, we can help you to find the right wording and find the right ways to write those kinds of emails. But yeah, don't be nervous. Try to make those connections, build your network.
Absolutely. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with Dr. Gareth, Dr. Faizan, and Dr. Noman for that.
Yeah, just one more comment here. An advice here that if you want to collaborate with the researchers, and as Dr. Gareth said, that don't be shy and write to them. Another thing could be using a platform, and there are a lot of platforms available, and you can just post your. It's not necessary that you have published a paper. You can just put your thoughts and your plans to publish a paper, and then see who comment, because there are a lot of people who are already also working on the same project, and they will come to you. And I can provide you some of the accounts which are impactful, and you can write it the Fast Track Impact. This is a Twitter account and an organization which you can check. And another name is LSE Social Impact Blog. And what you can do, you can just go to these accounts and post your research or post your plan of research, and you will see a lot of other researchers coming to you and will ask several questions, and you can collaborate with them. One more advice could be that you should also post your paper on the preprint repositories. There are a lot of free repositories available where you can post your paper, and you will get a lot of comments from the peers, and you can also communicate and talk to them about future collaborations.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Faizan. Another question for Abdullah Sadi, saying, should we consider all citations a positive feedback for the research all the time? I think so.
I think so too. Yeah. What do we think? Noman, what do you think? That's a positive thing, right? So always all the citations always positive. I think so.
Can you repeat what he's actually asking?
Yeah.
Yes, sure. He's saying if a citation is always a positive feedback for the research.
Yeah, of course. It's a very positive feedback.
Yeah, if they cite you, so they like you, they like your work, yes. Right?
Yeah. I mean, there are like some like situations where you could imagine that, like, you know, when you actually read the paper, the citation might be very negative. You know, this is the worst paper I've ever read or something like that. But, you know, in the actual article, the way that you get cited could be good or bad. But overall, when people look at your citation metrics, they're not going to be able to distinguish.
Yes, because that's a number. That's a number that would show exactly that you've been read and you've been referred.
Right, exactly.
And you've been referenced, actually. Really, good or bad, that's what you would get only when you would read the paper, how it has been cited. But it's always good that your paper was read.
Yes, absolutely, for sure. So I would like to remind all of you that the recorded version of this webinar or this session will be available on our IVPN library as soon as possible. We're still waiting for your interactions and questions, if any.
Well, you can feel free to get in touch with us after the session too, if you have follow-up questions. Sure. It's absolutely fine.
I think all of you have already shared your email, right?
Yeah.
So if any question left without answers, or you're facing a technical problem to write them, please never hesitate to send them directly to Dr. Gareth, Dr. Faizan, and Noman. And I really thank you again for joining us today, and for this amount of huge and informative session, like Nada Ahmed says and repeats. It's always a pleasure to have you and to hear from you. So we are closing the session today, and we really hope to continue hearing from you and listening to your active participation by email. And I hope this session will be animated always by you, Dr. Gareth, and your esteemed guest. You always amaze us with your enthusiasm, your contagious enthusiasm and energy, and would like to see you often and often in our IVPN research sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you for your participations and your attendance.
Good evening, everybody.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank
Bye.
you very much. It was very nice.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.